And we're live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Forever Rugby on Forever Sports. It is a Thursday, and we are almost a little over a week until rather the Springboks will be taking on the All Blacks, as well as Argentina taking on Australia next week, Saturday. And it's all starting to become quite real. We're starting to see the media schedules. For example, the All Blacks will be arriving in South Africa in the next couple of days, where they'll then be traveling up to the Lowveld, where they're going to be basing themselves in and around Mbombela next week. And the exciting news is at this stage, we will be going up to Nelspruit. We'll be covering the Springboks next week, as well as the All Blacks. We're going to press conferences, going to some of the training sessions, taking you guys behind the scenes of what is going to be a very interesting build-up towards a pretty key match for both sides next week, Saturday. So it should be very interesting. And on the back of a lot of speculation regarding performance stuff like that, SANZAAR has decided to just complicate things even more, and they've officially confirmed that for the Rugby Championship this year, the 20-minute red card will be in effect. I mean, you'll talk about that a little bit now, about whether people agree, whether they don't agree. Some very interesting news as well. For example, in the last sort of hour and a half, the URC fixtures for next season have come out. We will have a video coming out on that in the next couple of hours. So make sure you get ready for that. Yeah, after a bit of a break, we basically will have back-to-back rugby, internationally. I think, between now and the end of the Rugby Championship, I think there are only 3 weekends where we're not going to see the Springboks playing. And then literally by the end of September, when the Rugby Championship comes to an end, these South African teams will begin their URC campaigns. So the rugby season is well and truly ready to go. And I think it's going to be a very interesting season ahead, not only from a Springboks perspective, but also from a URC perspective. There's a lot of pressure on certain South African sides, like the likes of the Sharks, who have made so many signings. There's some big pressure to see if Stormers can repeat the sort of performance that they did last season. You expect the Bulls step up. Interesting to see what the Lions can do. And what the South African teams will be like in the second season of the URC. Now they've had a little bit of time to kind of adjust to life in up north, really. Obviously, also new competitions in the Champions Cup and the Challenge Cup coming in. The Chiefs will be joining things, so it's a very exciting next sort of 18 months for South African rugby. And I think that from now until the World Cup, it's just going to be non-stop action. So yeah, I think that it's all about start going down, really. And not to mention, actually, I mean, I said that there's no week rugby this weekend, but the Blitzboks get their campaign underway tomorrow morning. They'll be playing against Tonga, Malaysia tomorrow morning, Tonga tomorrow afternoon, Scotland Saturday morning. We'll be live for a lot of those matches. Will be live tomorrow afternoon for the Tonga match, or tomorrow evening rather. We'll be live on Saturday morning for the Scotland match, as well as hopefully the quarterfinals, and then we'll try and be live for the semi-finals and the finals on Sunday as well, depending on what happens with the Blitzboks and where they sort of end up going and stuff like that. But please do smash like on the video. Please do subscribe to the channel as well. Who's in the chat? I see JP's here. I see Jaden is here. I see Mo's here. Yeah, please start smashing the like button and stuff like that. Let's get the conversation going. Let's get the build-up going because, yeah, we had a very interesting press conference yesterday from Jacques Nienaber, who confirmed that France State is fully fit and ready to go. However, Duane Vermeulen is in a bit of a race against time with regards to whether he'll be fit enough to be ready for next weekend. And it's going to be very interesting if they do decide to risk him against the All Blacks. Because, to be fair, if there's one player that you kind of feel that if he's fit enough to play will be good enough, it is Duane Vermeulen. He's got so much experience. He operates at such a high level at all times that you do feel that he could be a player that could step up. But at the same time, do you want to risk, him not being ready next week? Considering that we do have quite a few options at number 8, although no real sort of Duane Vermeulen replacement in terms of somebody that ticks all the various boxes that he does tick. We saw Jasper Wiese with a very impressive performance in the first test, bit of an average performance in the third test. You saw Kwagga Smith, who's been really good off the bench but as somebody who's primarily been used as an impact player. We saw Evan Roos have a decent game, not a spectacular game, I don't think, in the second test, but a reasonable game. So there's a lot of calls to make, and also Jacques Newman was explaining yesterday why why Marcel Garcia and Apple Fassi will drop from the squad, and just sort of basically saying that the door's not closed. However, they've been given their performance sort of overview. Basically, what happens is that after every game or after season stuff like that, all the Springboks are given a sort of breakdown of the areas that they have to perform in, and they're given a rating between 1 and 5, and that basically is an indication of what they're doing well, what they're doing badly, what they need to improve, for example, and that gives them a bit of indication of where they are within their game. And so basically, Jacques was saying yesterday that both Apelele and Marcel Coetzee, know exactly where they need to improve, where they need to work on, where they're kind of coming a bit short, and obviously that with injury and stuff like that, they could very well be back in the squad quite soon. But that they do know what they need to work on and where they were coming a bit short. And I think that's the one thing that we have to give this coaching staff a lot of credit, because if there's one thing they've brought in, it's transparency. Where everybody knows where they sit, everybody knows what their position are. There's no sort of second guessing, people not knowing where they are. What their sort of opinions are from the coaching staff. They're very open and transparent with the supporters, with the media, with the players. So if you're being dropped, or if you're not being selected, they can sit there saying, "This is why." This is what you have to do. So I think in that place, it's a very healthy environment, because you never feel like you don't know what's going on. You're always kind of up to speed. It's like they basically told them in the World Cup, this is the 23. This is our base 23. If unless anything radical happens, this will be the 23 that will run out for the World Cup final if we get there. It's your responsibility as the non-23 to put pressure on them and to make sure they're performing their best. And if you can really step up and break the door down, there's obviously space for you to move in. But, this is where it stands. And what I think has been very healthy is that they've built an environment where the players who aren't playing are as important as the players are playing, in terms of the preparation during the week, in terms of making sure they are ready to stand in as soon as they can, in terms of helping with the research, helping the team preparation. And what this coaching staff have done is that they've created an environment where everybody has something to do. You are not just there as the third choice hooker. And you're not just there to understand the game, and maybe you might get one game a year. You are there, and they'll sit there saying, right, so your responsibility would be, for example, to study the other team's scrum or the line or whatever, and you're going to have an opportunity during the week to give your input, to say, right, chaps, this is what I've been doing, this is what I've looked at, this is where we can get at them, this is where they're weak, this is where they're strong. And they've just lent on so many different players' abilities and skill sets that it's created a very productive environment. And I think that's been a very interesting sort of change. We saw this sort of impact that they had in the World Cup during the documentaries like Chasing the Sun. So, for example, you'll see that somebody like Elton Yankees will 95% of the time be running the water for the Springboks. And that's because of, the way that he sees the game, the way that he can sort of relay feedback, stuff like that. So he's got a much bigger role than just being the second choice flower half. And we've often seen that more and more, certain players running the water and stuff like that. And it's very specific, usually very specific type of players that can add feedback to the game whilst they're not playing in it. Which is really cool, because it becomes far bigger. I mean, we know the rugby is now bigger than a 15-man game. It's very much a 23-man game from a playing perspective, but it's now becoming so much more than just the 23 players in the park. And I think that's a very healthy thing for it. But yeah, so we're going to talk about the red card rule. We're going to talk about potential selection for next week, stuff like that. Just Service says, hello, good to see you in France. Stain will be ready. Let's not rush Dwayne. Mr. Lowe says, how's Steve? For us news, please can you explain how the 20-minute red card works, assuming the offending player can't come back on, but a sub can. Did you see how bad he lost against England in the T20 game? Yeah, it was a frustrating game last night, but what a knock it was from Tristan Stubbs. It was very entertaining to watch. Gareth Fergus says, could this be a way to give France a final hoorah? I don't know. I'm not quite sure that he's ready yet to walk away. I think he's very much fancying a third World Cup trophy. I mean, imagine, he could be the first player ever to win 3 World Cups, 2 Lion Series. I mean, he could be one of the most decorated players of all time if things were to all go to plan. But let's talk about the 20-minute red card, shall we? Because yeah, I don't like it. I've never liked it, and I think it's a really misinformed and ill-timed decision. But they have confirmed that they'll be reintroducing the 20-minute red card law. which means that if a player receives a red card, that player will depart the field, but after 20 minutes, you'll be able to bring on somebody else. And whilst the other player will not be able to play, for example, you will only be down to 14 men for 20 minutes, of which you can then bring a replacement on. And SANZAAR CEO Brendan Morris said, "This is a great decision for the Rugby Championship," which it's not, and follows on from his application to Super Rugby, which we all saw didn't work. All the SANZAAR national unions, Argentina, Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa, are fully behind the extension of the red card law trial. They said trail, but it's supposed to be trial. As a group, we firmly, SANZAAR there, doesn't it? As a group, we firmly believe the integrity of international matches is very important, and that wherever possible, matches must be a contest of 15 versus 15. Within the context of the game's laws, SANZAAR believes that a 20-minute red card allows for significant deterrent to deliberate acts of foul play. I have my doubts about that, while it also protects the contest of 15 on 15, which is what our unions, broadcasters, and fans are telling us is important. SANZAAR stands alongside World Rugby's important work on managing foul play and player welfare, and will conduct a formal research project across the 22 TRC period with all the comparative findings to be shared with World Rugby at the end of the season. The aim is to define the necessary information that allows the red card trial to be accepted into the full laws of the game in the future. So this is now the actual red card, what it means. So red card law trial is if a player is red carded, he may be replaced after 20 minutes by another player. The 20 minutes from when a player is red carded to when they may be replaced is measured as game time. So the same thing as yellow card. As a player receives a yellow card and a minimum for 10 minutes, if the same player then returns to the field after serving their 10-minute suspension and subsequently receives a second yellow card, which equates to an automatic red, a further 20 minutes, so it'll be half an hour in total. A player who has been tactically replaced can return to the field to replace a red card player. Note, if a team has unused replacements, example 23, still sitting on the bench, it does not have to use to replace a red card player before the use of players who have already been substituted, so you can substitute position for position. So if you've lost, if you substituted your hooker, for example, and then your substitute hooker gets a red card, you can put your original hooker back on. You don't have to bring on a center or a flank or whatever. Any red card player cannot return to the field under any circumstance. I do not believe in this red card rule, and I think that it is such a slap in the face of everything that World Rugby, whether they are doing it successfully or unsuccessfully, are trying to do. Player welfare is suddenly front and center in the game, and we've got that big lawsuit currently happening against World Rugby from former players, given the abnormal amount or percentage of players who are being diagnosed with early onset dementia. And this is a very complicated issue, and I think that people are far too dismissive about the issues without actually dissecting them. We are now seeing players in their 40s being diagnosed with early onset dementia. And, we've got players who are forgetting that they have children. We've got players who are losing their memory from 10, 15 years ago in their 40s. And so when people sit there saying, and I think it's very dismissive, when people sit there saying, you knew the risks, so therefore you should, that is such a, you are simplifying such a complex argument. And I think it's such a silly way to look at it. When people said you knew the risks, let's be perfectly honest. When you go and play rugby, you know that you might break a nose. You know you might break your leg. You know you might crack a rib. You know you might pull a hamstring. You know you might break a collarbone. That's one of the most common rugby injuries. And you're sitting there thinking, yeah, I think that there is a chance that I could be pretty badly injured. I don't think anyone was sitting there saying, you're going to lose your memories at 40. At 40 years old, 4 or 5 years after you've retired, you might start forgetting stuff. You might die in your 50s. So I completely reject that argument of you knew the risks. Nobody was sitting in front of rugby players, professional or amateur, saying, you could play the sport, but you might suffer from early onset dementia. You might die early. You might forget you've got kids. You might forget all your memories. But, you knew the risks. We didn't know the risks. They didn't know the risks. Let's be honest. Nobody knew those risks. Nobody knew those risks. You can live with a couple of plates in your arm, in your leg, whatever. You can live with a skew nose. People who've got cauliflower ear, those are not life-threatening injuries. Those are not injuries or conditions that are reducing your lifespan. It's a whole different thing. The fact that players, I mean, even in their 30s, I mean, the latest one was Ryan Jones. He's been diagnosed with early onset dementia. He's 41 years old. He's 41 years old. Dwayne Vermeulen's 37, by the way, to put that in perspective. That means that Dwayne Vermeulen could be 4 years away from being diagnosed with early onset dementia. But people's argument is you knew the risk. No, it's so much more complicated than that. And the reason that context is important is because you've got to look at what the measures are. And that's the whole rise of red cards and the rise of the idea of foul play, because people are trying to remove, they're trying to put player welfare in the middle of the issue, which is the right thing to do. And the only way to do that is to try and mitigate head injuries. And what does that mean? That means that you need to remove head contact, direct head contact, whether it's head-on-head contact, head-on-shoulder contact, any sort of direct head contact from the game. That's the plan. Which means that we are seeing red cards for something that wouldn't have happened 15 years ago. And again, I reject any argument where it says the game's gone soft. You sit there at home with, a pretty large beer bottle, and I can say it because I've got one, with a beer in your hands and biltong on the thing going, oh, the game's gone soft here, But when Ryan Jones is diagnosed with early onset dementia, and you sit there thinking, well, maybe if these laws had been in effect 15 years ago, he wouldn't have had this. Come on. And let's be honest. If you look at the type of athlete playing this game 20, 30, 40 years ago compared to the athletes we are seeing today, we are seeing like super athletes at the moment. Sports science has changed sport across the world. Records are tumbling. People are running faster. People are stronger. People are bigger. You've got... Jonah Lomu, for example, was a freak of nature back in the 90s. We're seeing lots of those type of players. I'm not saying that anyone is better than him, but those sort of mold players. You look at the size of some of the wings coming out here. Look at what forwards can do these days. Look at how quick some of these forwards are. Look at Archie Snyman. You look at the size of him. And he's not slow. He's got a good skill set. Players are playing at a higher level than ever before. They are hitting harder. They are running faster. And that will translate into injuries that are worse or far greater effects if you don't take action. So the action is, and I think it's the right idea, it just comes down to how you find the best way to implement it. But I certainly agree. I mean, the fact people there are trials where you cannot tackle above the waist. You cannot hit somebody even here. And that's because people will go for the chest and they'll get it wrong and they start hitting the shoulders, or start hitting the neck, or start hitting the head. So there are people who are looking at waist high, and you basically have to tackle below the waist. And that's what they're trying to do, to try and sit there saying that you can no longer go and smack somebody up here, up on the shoulder. Shoulder to shoulder contact is still all right, but it's been such a fine line between shoulder. Look, if that's your shoulder, for example, you're looking at what? 4 centimeters between that being shoulder and that hitting my neck, that hitting my head, and we cannot turn a blind eye to what is happening to your rugby players. And it's not about just the professionals. It's not. Ryan Jones was a professional rugby player, so he was being hit by some of the best players in the world. Look at club games, where you've got people playing who are in the prime of their life, in their 20s, very fit. Some of them, will be using steroids or supplements, stuff like that. And you do, because it's fairly unregulated at an amateur level, versus players who are in their 30s, still playing for fun, or 40s or whatever. They can still play around, and they still want to play for fun at club level. But, you've got that possibility of somebody really hurting each other. And that's why it's not only, the laws are not about the top level. It's about filtering the entire game. It's about schoolboy as well. We've got to make sure the game is safe. as somebody who might have kids one day, do I sit there going, rugby is, you should have a career in rugby, looking at a bunch of players who are having early onset dementia? I mean, if I have my children in the next couple of years, I could be in my 60s or 70s, and my child's being diagnosed with early onset dementia because, we didn't want the game to get soft, so we didn't take action. So I do think they're taking the right action. And the reason I'm talking about this is because we then look at the red card rule. And what is a red card? A red card is the ultimate punishment for foul play. You don't get a red card. I mean, you can in terms of like deliberate knockdowns if you have 2 consecutive yellows, for example. Red cards are reserved for acts of foul play, acts that are dangerous. So that is contact to the head, shoulder to head contact, red card. That is people who are lifting people to the horizontal and driving them down with force, for example, where people can break backs and necks and shit like that. A red card is the ultimate punishment in rugby. We are now lessening the punishment for acts of dangerous play on the rugby field during a time where player welfare is supposedly supposed to be at the forefront in the interest of entertainment. By saying that we want to play 15 on 15. And I'm sorry, Kwagga Smith, you go and ask Kwagga Smith right now, he got a red card in the 20th minute or the 15th, 20th minute of the Super Rugby final, and the Lions had to play the 60 minutes. I'm sure it was about the 20 minutes. Yeah, they had to play about 60 minutes. They had to play a full hour with 14 men. He will sit there and tell you that he felt like he let the team down because he was off for 60 minutes. And if he'd gone off for 20 minutes and somebody had been replaced, it's just not the same. It's not the same result. It's not the same punishment. Yes, he did. Yes, he doesn't get to play. But this whole concept of why must you punish the team for someone's mistake? It's a team game. And I really believe that if you want to take player welfare seriously, there has to be big punishments. And knowing that you've let the team down the entire match, for example, is a punishment. Not it's basically the same as 2 yellow cards. It's not that hectic. It's not that deep. So they lose me for 20 minutes and then somebody else goes back on and we're happy clappy. The game hasn't been marred by a red or ruined by a red. I hate it when people sit there saying reds ruin the game. Because a red card is there to make the game safe. And if we want this game to exist in 20, 30 years, this game has to be safe. Yes, it's always going to be physical. It's always going to be a physical game. There are always going to be risks of injuries. But let's remove the cataclysmic effects that this game can have so that a parent of a 6 or 7-year-old can very comfortably say, go play rugby. Because I believe that there are enough measures in place that you will be safe. Yeah, you might break an arm. You could break an arm falling off a swing. You might break a nose. You might get a blood nose. You might get a messed up ear or whatever. That happens. That can happen anywhere. You play hockey, for example, you get smacked in the face with a stick, you break your nose, that can happen. But let's get the game to a stage where permanent, brain damage and permanent head injury is off the cards. And I strongly believe that a red card needs to be something really serious because that's what it's supposed to be preventing. And personally, as a supporter, I don't give a toss if it's not 15 on 15. I don't care. Do you think I'm not sitting there saying, well, we wanted to play 15 on 15? If it's a red card, and a red card's a red card, and it's one of those unfortunate things. If it happens, it happens. It happens a lot of sporting codes. Any team sporting code has the potential for a red card. And if a game is suffering because in the long term this is going to help people be safer in the game, and that's a good thing. And I really don't think that this 20-minute red card thing does that. If you want to reduce it, then flippin' make it a 40-minute red card. Don't double the yellow card because it's worse than a yellow card. They come out and say, right, it's 40 minutes. I could sit there going, well, you know what? That's an entire half, for example. So if you get carded in the 20th minute, only after an hour will you be able to a further 40 minutes be able to put it on. But 20 minutes for me is nothing. I really think it's nothing. Teams can often get 2 yellow cards throughout the match. It's exactly the same as that. And yellow cards can be given for non-foul play. A yellow card can be an repeated infringement. It can be a deliberate knockdown. It can be, kicking the ball away. It can be, anything cynical. It doesn't have to be an active foul play. You can do something that is completely safe and not foul play and get a yellow card. And it's 10 minutes. Cool. So why should a red card, which is reserved for something that is either continue, in which case you're ruining the game in terms of game flow or whatever, or it's something dangerous. It shouldn't be. It's more than twice as bad. Somebody running in with their shoulder and smacking somebody in the head, full on head contact, is not twice as bad as 2 deliberate knockdowns. It's a lot worse than that. So yeah, I really don't like it. I really think that, we should not be compromising player welfare for the sake of entertainment. As a fan, I don't care if it's 14 on 15, if that's what has to happen. I really don't. I genuinely do not. I think that's part of the game. It's part of it. It's not just a 15 on 15 game. It's about making sure that you keep your discipline. It's about playing the game in the right way. It's about making sure that you're not putting yourself in situations which can compromise the team. Just as when you walk out, you only want to be conceding 6 to 7 penalties throughout the match. You don't want to be on the end of a red card. And a red card needs to be devastating. And a 20-minute red card is not devastating. And I don't think it sends the right message at the moment, especially given the climate we're at. So it is a bit of a tangent, and I'm sorry, and I was about to say it's not going to be the longest show, so we don't have time to talk about this all day. But, I don't think we should be, I really don't believe we should be compromising potentially player welfare for the sake of a spectacle. Let's build our game into a stage where red card and that's the whole point. It's an adjustment period because the moment there's a lot of discrepancy in the way it's being officiated. So a red card in 1 week won't be a red card the next week, and it'll take time. It will obviously take time because this has been something that's really come in the last 2 years, really. So it'll take time. But if we're talking about in 10 years' time, a situation where players have now developed and learned that you can't tackle sort of higher than the chest, and that's becoming the norm, and red cards have obviously went through the roof when you start clamping down on things, and then they taper off. Keep the same punishment. Make sure it is a devastating thing to get, and say, players, you've got to take a stand because as a World Rugby, for example, you sit there saying we are doing this for you. We are giving more red cards. We are clamping down so that you can remember your kids' names in your 40s and your 50s and your 60s. So that when you are 65, you can tell your grandkids about the time when you won the World Cup and you've got a perfect memory about it because you don't have permanent brain injury from years and years of being smacked in the head. And it's as I said, it will be an adjustment period, so we will have to suffer through it for a bit, but it's all about what we're trying to achieve, isn't it, at the end of the day? And what we are trying to achieve is promoting a game and ensuring the longevity and the survival of a sport which is under a lot of pressure for being unsafe. And the way to do that is to take a very harsh stand, to go through a couple of very muddy years. These are the muddy years. But if it gets us to a point where the game is safe, where the game is popular, where the game is not, got a bad stigma attached to it, and can continue to grow and get bigger and bigger and bigger, then going through a couple of years of frustrating times is worth it. And maybe it sucks that we have to be the ones to go through it, but at the same idea, for example, you can be there in 40 years when they release a report saying that, the permanent brain damage or whatever effects on rugby players has dramatically decreased in the last 20 years compared to the years before. You can sit there saying, Well, I was actually part of that. I played rugby, or I was refed, or I was, part of the game, part of the discussions, part of the supporters. That was part of that process. I watched that process to this becoming a safer game, this becoming a good news story, because we had to go through a couple of really cuck years. And sometimes rules work, sometimes rules don't work. Sometimes you'll have to relook at them. Sometimes you'll have to relook at how it's officiated, how it's judged, and stuff like that. There will be an adjustment period. Look how, I mean, I was the first one to say that I didn't like the 50-22 rule, for example. I hated it when it came in. I was like, well, this is not rugby league. What is this crap? The 50-22 has revolutionized rugby. It really has. Um, it's actually added a whole different element to the game, and I'm really enjoying it. So yeah, but that's what I think. So I really don't like the fact that they're going with the 20-minute red card. I'm quite frustrated about that. I mean, how many red cards? There were no red cards in the South Africa Wales series. No, there was a couple of yellows. There was one red card. Maybe could have been two red cards in the Ireland New Zealand. There was a red card in the England Australia. I don't think there was a red card in the Argentina versus Scotland. So if you're looking at the 18 matches that there are in the Rugby Championship, every team plays 5, so 20 matches odd. Well, not quite, so about 18 or 17 matches. In the Rugby Championship, how many red cards are we expecting? Maybe 3. I'll be very surprised if there were ever more than 3. So then you're looking at, even if it's 15 games, which they are more. How many weekends? I think there's 6 weekends of 2 matches each. There's more than 6 weekends. 2. No, there are 6 weekends. So 12 matches. Oh, yeah, there's 4 teams. So it's 12 matches. So if you're getting 2 to 3 red cards, I think 75%, 75% of the matches you're not going to have red cards. And if those 25% matches where there is a red card means that this game gets safer, I think it's a small price to pay, personally. I just think that we want this game to grow, we want this game to last, and therefore we need to take dramatic steps to make sure it does. Because right now, you look at, for example, how competitive it's getting at a schoolboy level. As a future parent, I might sit there going, you know what, it's actually not worth it. It really isn't. And you don't want parents even thinking about that. A parent doesn't worry about soccer or football. They don't sit there going, he shouldn't play because he's going to get hurt. Parents worry about rugby, and parents worry about hockey. Not even cricket, by the way, which actually is getting quite a large number of concussions, but they're also making a big stand, allowing concussion substitutes and stuff like that, And I think that, for example, concussion substitutes is a very interesting concept, and we haven't had a concussion substitute coming in yet. Because in football, for example, if you use all your subs, but there's a concussion, you can bring in somebody else. In cricket, you can actually have a concussion sub, and you can bring in a like-for-like player. If it's a batsman that got a concussion, you can bring another concussion, because they want to get away from people playing with concussions and stuff like that. So I'm interested to see if rugby ever goes down that road. But it's really good to see sports around the world taking a stand, because there are far too many people who are going to suffer because we were too late to act. But anyway, let's go to some of the comments. Sorry, people. I know it's been a bit of a tangent, but yeah, it just annoyed me when I saw the release. But I haven't got through any of the comments, so I'm going to start. I'm just going to go. I'm seeing Clint DeVos saying, "What happens in the event when players in the same team have a collision with head contact? Who gets sent off? Player safety is not only when an opposing player makes head contact." It's an interesting point. People were actually saying that when people look, but I suppose the only time where you, as a teammate, if you're running into others, if you're tripping, or if you haven't seen somebody coming. And to be fair, I think you're not going to give a red card to an opposition player if he doesn't see a player and happens to run into him. We have seen instances where you sit there going, what about this? So it is a bit of a muddy area and difficult to judge, because I don't know what to do in that situation. Unfortunately, I don't know all the answers. I usually do. I mean, I have answers to a lot of things. I could solve lots and lots of problems if you want to give them to me, but I can't solve everything. Joan says, this is why rugby players can't remember their kids' names at 40. I still play rugby. I focus on winning, but I have to worry about my safety because the referee clearly won't with his red cards. See, that's somebody who's playing rugby at this level. David says, I think with all the inconsistency of the reds and the yellows cards these days, they actually ruin what could have been a brilliant spectacle. The 20 red card is better for the game. S-Box says another argument: players tackle in upright position, but with no head contact, it is suddenly seen as a good tackle. But if the head touches the other player, it is suddenly seen as dangerous. Well, I think that's why they're looking at the whole bringing it down below chest or bringing it down below waist, for example, to try and remove that potential ambiguity or potential gray area, I suppose. Bitcoin says about fairness. It's often just bad luck when a player hits another head. This 20 minutes brings back fairness and it's pretty damn devastating. I don't think it's devastating at all. I really don't. I don't think it has that big of a bearing. I mean, an 18-minute match, 20 minutes, you still got 60 minutes. You still 75% of the match you're playing with 15 on 15. Is it really that devastating? Also, Charles Shooter says, imagine a Formula One, every team has a spare car in the pits. How much more dangerous would drivers drive, knowing the team could just send out another car after a short period of time? Good point. You got to remove jeopardy, for example. John says, Steve, all upset. So to cheer you up, just remember that Deontay has electricity in the system and literally can't stop that. Yeah, but he's gonna flip and play for the Sharks and he's gonna hack me. But I do want to tell the Deontay story. That's somebody I'd really love to sit down and actually chat about the last couple of years. I think he's gonna have a lot to say. And understand his situation, what actually happened, where he made mistakes, where he didn't make mistakes. So I think at the bottom at the moment is just a lot of unknown. We actually don't know what happened. And I don't think he's ready to talk just yet, and fair enough. Yeah, but when he does, I'd really love to be the person that can really sit down and just speak about a situation, stuff like that. But he will be coming back to rugby next year, and I'm very excited to see what he does because he was a phenomenal player to watch. But spectators didn't pay to see foul play either, says Mo. With this logic, Beast should have got a red card against Japan in the quarterfinals. I bet if that happens, you guys would have a different opinion. No, red card's a red card, Chief. As a Lions fan, I watched Kwaka Smith get their red card, and you take it on the chin and you sit there saying, "Well, this sucks," but that's what can happen. I definitely didn't sit there. I put it this way: I don't consider I don't consider the fact that we actually do have a Super Rugby, but on a technicality. If you get a red card, you get a red card. Oh, it says, Steve, is there a girlfriend you're not telling us about because of all this talk of having children? Okay, no, whoa. I said one day. I didn't say one day soon. I said one day. I can barely look after myself, let alone a child. Still need to get to the stage where I can look after a cat. Maybe a dog one day. Last time I had fish, they died. Sean says, agreed, as someone who had his head smacked a lot in the racks and coaches not knowing what to do and just letting you play, we need to take a stand, 100%, especially at school level, because that's becoming such a massive issue. I would say if a strong team still wins with a red card, then the player don't feel as bad because the team still won. Yeah, and that can be a situation, but, I still just feel that you want to make it the worst possible punishment, and you can't do much more than just... then a slap at the wrist, you know what I'm saying? And yeah, I mean, you can talk about -25 and stuff like that, but to these players who are earning a lot of money, it would have to be a pretty hefty monetary fine to really make that big of a difference. And I don't think it will ever be that. I mean, it's like when footballers get fined like £100,000 or £10,000, £20,000, and they're earning four times that in a week. It's not really that big of an issue. But yeah, we're gonna wrap it up there, people. We will have a video coming up later on the URC fixtures which came out, and so we'll have that up later, and then we probably won't be live tomorrow for a new show, but we will be live tomorrow for the sevens. We are playing against Tonga. I think it's like 5:30 or 5:30. I got the fixtures here somewhere, but it's around then. You'll see it tomorrow. I'll schedule the live stream, and then you'll know what's happening. They've got communication. Here we go for the schedule, and loading. That doesn't help at all. So it just says that from 5:30 until 10, we will have Kenya versus Jamaica, Australia versus Uganda. But I don't know. So we're either the 6th match or the 4th match. I'm not sure which one. So we'll be sometime between 5:30 tomorrow and 10 o'clock. I would imagine latest we would be tomorrow is about 8:30, 9ish. The earliest tomorrow, I reckon, will be probably about 7ish. If I had to guess. So I reckon we'll be tomorrow between about 6:30 and 8:30. We will, 6:30 and 9:30, we'll be playing against Tonga tomorrow. We'll be live for that match, and we'll be live in the morning on Saturday for versus Scotland. Again, we'll either be playing at about 10ish, I imagine, or about 12ish, 12ish. So we'll hopefully get more clarity on exactly when those matches are happening. And then we'll be live for the quarterfinals on Saturday evening. And then we'll have to see what happens when it comes to the semi-finals. We might not be live for the semi-finals, but we should hopefully be live for the finals if we do make it, because the final is at about 10 o'clock on Sunday night. So we can definitely be live for that. But yeah, please do smash like on the video. Please do subscribe to the channel as well. We are very close to 15,000 subscribers. We're going to try and get there. It very much looks like at this stage we will be going up to Mbombela next week. So you're looking forward to that. Hopefully we'll have some really cool behind the scenes content. We're going to be going to some All Blacks press conferences, going to the Springboks conferences, hopefully go to the stadium, do a bit of a tour of the stadium, see what Mbombela is all about. Which should be really, really fun. So please do smash a like on the video. Please do subscribe. Consider becoming a member, because it's through the help of our members and stuff like Super Chat, stuff like that we can get to these games. And it all kind of depends on what we can afford to do. But yeah, thank you very much, people. Keep well, keep safe, and then I'll see you guys tomorrow for some Blitzbox in the Commonwealth Games. Let's go.